Title: Everything tasted like metal that night. The wine wasn't poisoned. I know because I drank it. 2 full glasses. But that didn't stop me from checking the label 4 times, sniffing the rim, and then setting it down just to watch her drink it first. Not because I was scared, because I was hoping for something I'm ashamed to admit. The truth is, I didn't plan anything. I didn't even plan to show up. I told myself I wouldn't go, not after everything. But then I put the ring in my jacket pocket and drove across the city anyway, through traffic, through doubt, through the kind of thick silence in my head that makes even your own breathing sound too loud. And when I walked in and saw her, God, she was laughing. Not a fake, polite laugh either. The real one. The one I hadn't heard in 6 months. The one that used to belong to me. He was sitting across from her. Sharp suit. Younger than I expected. The kind of smile that makes waiters refill his water without being asked. I hated him immediately. She didn't see me at first, which made it worse, because it gave me time to notice everything. The way her knee was tilted toward him. The way he wiped something off her cheek like he'd done it 100 times before. The way she didn't flinch. I walked up to the table like I wasn't about to shatter into 1,000 skin-covered pieces. She looked up, blinked twice, then said, "Wendell?" Like she was surprised I remembered how to open a door. I didn't answer. I didn't even sit down. I just reached into my jacket, pulled out the ring, and placed it on the table, right between her salad fork and her lover's empty bread plate. Her smile died mid-breath. He said nothing, just leaned back slowly, like he'd been briefed on me beforehand. And I felt everything inside me start to crack. But I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even breathe, honestly. I just looked at her and said, "You left this behind. Thought you might need it tonight." There was a silence that didn't feel like silence. It felt like falling. And then she did the one thing I never could have predicted. She smiled. Right in front of him. Right in front of me. Like she'd just won. And that's when I realized this wasn't a betrayal. It was a performance. And the show wasn't over yet. She didn't touch the ring. Not even a glance downward. It just sat there, catching the overhead light, the tiny diamond mocking me with every sparkle. Like it knew I was about to humiliate myself in front of everyone, and didn't care. I stood there, heat rising to my ears, knowing I had maybe 5 more seconds before the silence around our table turned into whispers around the room. The kind of whispers that live on after you leave. I hated that. I hated her for putting me in this position. I hated myself more for walking into it. "You could have just called," she finally said. It was her voice that did it. Calm, flat, polished, like she'd practiced it in the mirror. I laughed, short and pathetic. Yeah, well, I figured this was more theatrical. Her guy, just shifted in his chair. No attempt to shake my hand. No attempt to stand. Honestly, I respected that more than if he'd tried to fake politeness. He knew exactly who I was. He just didn't care. "Didn't expect you to show up," she added, brushing a non-existent crumb off her lap. "You hate places like this." She was right. I did. Low lighting, overpriced meals, napkins that feel like they've been ironed by angels. None of it ever made me feel comfortable. But I wasn't here to eat. I was here to hand her the consequences of her silence. "I didn't come for the salmon tartare," I said, nodding toward her untouched plate. "I came because I couldn't carry it anymore." She didn't ask what it was, because she already knew. The table between us wasn't just wood. It was years of everything we didn't say out loud. The nights I stayed late to help her with tax stuff. The mornings she left without kissing me goodbye. The weeks I thought her coldness was just stress, not detachment. And now here we were. 2 ghosts arguing over who got to keep the houseplants. "Can we talk outside?" she asked, finally, not because she wanted to talk, but because the room was watching now. Her lover looked at her, then at me, then at the ring, like it was radioactive. I followed her outside. The city was humid. The air stuck to my skin like guilt. She stopped near a service door and crossed her arms. "You shouldn't have come, Wendell." I looked at her. Really looked. For the first time in months, I saw the version of her that used to cry at indie films and fall asleep on my shoulder during thunderstorms. She was gone. Or maybe she'd never been real. "I know about him," I said finally. "About everything. The hotel receipts. The texts. The AirPods you left in his car that synced to my phone." Her face didn't flinch. Not even a flicker. "You must have dug really deep to get all that." That was it. No denial. No apology. Just that same bored detachment you'd give a call from a number you didn't save. "You made me feel like I was losing my mind," I said. You could have just told me. I tried, she snapped. You just didn't want to hear it. Every time I pulled away, you tightened your grip. So it's my fault. I didn't say that. But she didn't have to. The implication hung between us like fog. And then, in the quiet that followed, she said something I'll never forget. You were safe, Wendell. You were quiet. Predictable. I needed that. But it wasn't enough. I wanted to scream. To throw the ring into the sewer and vanish. But all I did was nod. Because some part of me always knew. And still, it didn't make it hurt any less when she walked back inside, slid into her seat beside her lover, and never once turned around to see if I was still standing there. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. After she walked back inside, like I was just another ex who couldn't take a hint, I stood by that side entrance for what must have been 15 minutes, blinking into the orange glow of the alley lights, heart jackhammering against my ribs like it was trying to claw its way out. A bouncer walked past and gave me a look like he wasn't sure if I was loitering or mourning. Honestly, I wasn't sure either. Eventually, I started walking. Just anywhere. No destination, no plan, no clue. I shoved my hands deep into my coat pockets and kept my eyes on the sidewalk. I couldn't bring myself to think too hard, because thinking meant remembering. Remembering meant feeling. And I wasn't ready for that yet. I wasn't ready to face the real weight of what had just happened. But the thing is, grief isn't polite. It doesn't wait for you to sit down with tea and process it. It crashes in like a drunk friend at 3 a.m., kicking your door open and shouting things you didn't want to hear. And by the time I finally made it back to our apartment, my apartment, now, I was exhausted, emotionally hollow, and vibrating with leftover adrenaline that had nowhere to go. When I walked through the door, the place felt too clean, too still, as if someone had pressed pause on our life, and I was just a background character who accidentally walked into the wrong scene. The air still smelled like her perfume, light citrus with that faint powdery undertone, and I hated that I noticed. I dumped my keys onto the counter and stared at the couch. That's where I had first told her I loved her. That's where we watched an entire season of True Detective in one weekend and argued about whether the killer twist made sense. That's where she sat, just 2 weeks ago, texting him while I rubbed her feet and asked her how her day went. I was the fool in this story, the side character, the background noise to her new life. But something was bugging me, something I couldn't explain. She was too calm tonight, too measured, like she knew this confrontation was coming and had already rehearsed every response. I kept replaying it in my head, the way she never reached for the ring, the way she didn't ask what I knew, the way she walked back to him like she'd already closed the door behind her. There was a reason for that confidence, and I needed to know what it was. I sat down at her desk, the same one I helped assemble from IKEA when we first moved in. I opened the top drawer. Nothing unusual, sticky notes, pens, a broken charging cable. But the second drawer, that one held a folder I'd never seen before. Black, unmarked, tucked beneath a stack of client invoices. I shouldn't have opened it. I know that. But curiosity in moments like this isn't harmless. It's surgical. It digs into things you were never meant to see. Inside were printouts, emails, screenshots, photos, not of them, of me. Conversations I'd forgotten I had. Texts with coworkers. A receipt from a bar I went to 2 years ago with friends. GPS data. A screenshot of my LinkedIn page. Notes scribbled in the margins. Usual Tuesday bar, monthly order history. Who's Jenna? HR. I didn't understand. It wasn't surveillance. It was tracking. Like someone was compiling a dossier on me, piece by piece. And at the very bottom of the folder, there was a receipt. Not from a hotel. Not from a restaurant. From a private investigator. Dated 3 months ago. I sat back, stunned. My fingers felt numb. Why would she hire a PI? On me? I never cheated. Never even came close. I didn't lie to her. Didn't keep secrets. Didn't even hide my Amazon packages when I bought stuff I didn't need. So what was she looking for? Was it to justify what she was doing? Build a case against me so she could leave without guilt? Or, worse, was this his idea? Was I being monitored? Profiled? Prepped for something? That's when I noticed the envelope taped to the back of the folder. My name was written on the front in her handwriting. It simply read, "In case he finds out." I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding, palms sweating. Because suddenly, this wasn't just a story of infidelity anymore. It was something else. Something I hadn't even begun to understand. I didn't open the envelope right away. I couldn't. My hand was hovering over it for what felt like 10 minutes, just suspended there, shaking slightly like it was magnetized. The words, "in case he finds out," kept echoing in my head like they were part of some weird dream logic. Who writes something like that? Who prepares for that moment in advance, like it was inevitable? Eventually, I sat back down at her desk, placed the envelope flat in front of me, and just stared. There was a weight to it, not physical, but emotional. Like once I opened it, I wouldn't be able to pretend anymore. There'd be no more rationalizing, no more, maybe she just needed space, or maybe I missed the signs. No, this felt final. I slid my finger under the seal and opened it. There was a single typed page inside. No greeting. No "Dear Wendell." Just a message. By the time you read this, you'll already know. Or you'll be suspicious enough to start digging. Either way, I'm sorry you had to find out like this. But I need you to understand something. This was never about love. Not the kind you thought, anyway. You were selected. I won't get into the details because I'm not allowed to. But I was approached and I agreed. At the time, it felt like a job. Something clean, controlled, ethical, even. You were kind, predictable, sincere. That's exactly why they wanted you. I didn't mean to get attached. But I did. Somewhere along the way, pretending turned into something real. And that's what made it messy. You'll be angry, confused. But I promise, it's not what you think. Or maybe it is, and that's worse. You'll probably try to find out more. You shouldn't. Seriously, Wendell, don't go further. Let it go. Leave the ring on the table and walk away. You don't know what you're inside of. But I do. J. I reread it 5 times. Then 10. Each time, it made less sense and more sense all at once. Selected? Approached? What the hell did that mean? I sat back, my mind flipping through every memory with her like a broken Rolodex. Our first argument. Her sudden interest in my job. That time I caught her reading my emails, and she said she clicked the wrong tab. Was this all fake? Was our marriage a con? An assignment? Was I an assignment? I thought back to the photos, the notes, the PI receipt. It wasn't spying. It was data collection. It was logging, pattern analysis. I'm not some celebrity. I don't have money or secrets. I live paycheck to paycheck and drink discount coffee. So what was the angle? I opened my laptop and began searching her emails. Most were work-related, but buried in the archives was a chain labeled Agency Request, Archive Division. That's when my stomach dropped. I clicked, and most of the thread was encrypted junk, unreadable, blacked out. But one line stood out, plain and chilling. Subject's behavioral baseline stable. Recommending continued proximity for observation. Subject. Behavioral baseline. Observation. It didn't feel like betrayal anymore. It felt like study. Like I was some experiment, some lab rat who thought he had a home, but was really living in a glass box the whole time. I sat in the dark for over an hour, the computer humming beside me, her words repeating in my mind. You were selected. You don't know what you're inside of. Was this part of some psychological study? Some corporate think tank? Government surveillance? I couldn't tell what was real anymore. All I knew was that the person I married had never truly existed. But I did. And now I wanted answers. Which is why I did the one thing her letter told me not to do. I called the number on the private investigator's receipt. And someone answered. But it wasn't a receptionist or a voicemail. It was a man's voice. Calm. Clear. And he said, "Mr. Aldrich, we were expecting your call." There are moments in life when your brain quietly whispers. You can still turn back. This was one of those moments. As I sat in the dark, staring at my phone with the voice still echoing in my ear, "Mr. Aldrich, we were expecting your call." Every survival instinct I had was screaming to hang up, delete the receipt, burn the folder, and pretend I never opened that envelope. But I didn't hang up, because the part of me that needed answers was louder than the part of me that wanted to be safe. I cleared my throat and said, "Who is this?" There was a pause on the other end. Then, "You already know that doesn't matter." I swallowed hard. "Is this about Jessa?" Another pause. This time longer. "This is about you, Mr. Aldrich. It's always been about you." I felt a cold wave pass through me. Why me? I'm nobody. A small exhale, almost like a laugh. Exactly. The line went silent. Not dead, just quiet. Then a new voice came on. Female. Confident. Warmer, but still clinical. "Wendell," she said, using my first name this time. "You weren't supposed to know. Not yet. But since you've accelerated the timeline, We'd like to offer you the opportunity to receive limited closure. Limited closure. Like I was filing a customer complaint about a faulty toaster. She continued, "We'd prefer not to do this over the phone. Would you be willing to meet in person?" I hesitated. Meet where? There's a building on 6th and Langston, across from the old train depot. Black glass. No signage. Tomorrow. Noon. Come alone. Don't bring the documents. Click. The line went dead. I sat there, stunned. Everything in my life had become wrapped in this surreal fog. One minute, I was a warehouse inventory guy married to a woman who loved indie films and hated olives. And the next, I was being summoned to a no-name building for a limited closure by people who somehow knew my name before I introduced myself. And I knew. Even as I threw the phone on the couch and buried my face in my hands, I was going. I could not go. It was like being halfway through a book that suddenly starts referencing pages you've never read. I had to see the ending. The next morning, I didn't sleep. Didn't shave. I sat on the edge of my bed from 5 a.m. until 11:15, trying to convince myself this was a bad idea. Then I put on a plain gray hoodie, jeans, and walked out the door. The building was exactly where she said it would be. Black glass, no signage, quiet as a crypt. I hesitated before entering, not out of fear, but because the building didn't look new. It looked like it had always been there, like it had been waiting for me long before I knew to look for it. Inside, a man in a navy suit stood behind a marble reception desk with nothing on it. No computer, no phone, just a clipboard. He looked up, nodded once, and gestured to the elevator. "They're waiting for you on 6." I didn't speak. I just stepped inside. The elevator had no buttons, just a single panel that lit up the number 6 the second the doors closed. It opened into a hallway lined with silver doors and low white noise, like the hum of a refrigerator or static on an old TV. At the end of the hallway was a room. Simple. No windows. 2 chairs, 1 table, glass of water. The woman from the phone was already sitting. She was older than I expected. Sharp eyes. Business casual. The kind of presence that makes you feel underdressed even when you're not. "Wendell," she said, standing. "Thank you for coming." I didn't shake her hand. I sat down slowly, eyes scanning the room for cameras. "There's nothing recording you," she said, as if reading my mind. "That part's over." "What is this?" I asked, voice tighter than I expected. She nodded, like she respected the directness. "It's a program. You were part of it. Still are, technically." "What kind of program?" She leaned forward, fingers interlaced. "Emotional modeling. Predictive trust degradation. You were part of a long-term compatibility analysis designed to train synthetic behavior response systems." I blinked. "In English?" She took a breath, like she'd had to explain this 100 times before. "We use real human interactions, real relationships, to study how people respond to betrayal, trust erosion, and emotional dissonance. Your marriage to Jessa was curated, observed, analyzed. So it was fake." She paused. "The structure was designed. The emotions were real. That's what made it valuable." I stood up. "So I was just a test subject? A data point?" "No," she said softly. "You were the control." The word hit me like a slap. Control. The one who doesn't change. The constant. The naive one. The predictable one. "I want out," I said. "You were never in," she replied. "You were simply useful." I stepped toward the door, heart pounding. She didn't try to stop me. But as I grabbed the handle, she added one last thing. "Wendell, before you go, has anything about your past ever felt strange to you? Like something was off, even before Jessa?" I turned to look at her, confused. And in that moment, something began to dawn on me. A flicker. A seed of doubt buried deep in my childhood memories. Something I hadn't thought about in years. Because as I walked out of that room and back into the elevator, one word followed me like a shadow. Still are. I didn't go back home after I left the building. I couldn't even remember how I got outside. I must have walked out, maybe down the elevator, maybe through a hallway, I don't know. I just know that I ended up sitting in my car with the engine off, hands locked around the steering wheel like I was trying to hold the world together with my grip. They said I was the control, that everything I thought was mine, my relationship, my marriage, my pain, was part of some emotional test tube, and I was the one being used to calibrate it. But it was that last line that echoed the loudest. Still are. Like the story hadn't ended. Like there was still more to take from me. And then there was the question, Has anything about your past ever felt strange? I didn't want to admit it, but yes, it had. The thing about doubt is it doesn't start with a bang. It starts with a whisper. Something small. A crack. An old photograph that doesn't quite make sense. A memory that doesn't fully belong to you. When I got back to my apartment, I didn't sit down. I didn't turn on the lights. I walked straight to the back closet, to the box labeled Wendell, college/old stuff. I hadn't opened it in years. Mostly yearbooks, postcards, dusty notebooks, a few cords I'd never identified. But what I was looking for was on the bottom, a photo album my mother gave me after I graduated. I opened it slowly. Page after page of childhood smiles. Birthdays. Halloween costumes. Science fair trophies. It was all there. But the longer I looked, the more wrong it started to feel. Not because the photos were fake, they were mine, but because they all had the same rhythm, the same composition. As if someone had staged my childhood like a Netflix original with just enough realism to pass casual inspection. One picture caught my eye. Me, age 9, holding a fish by a lake. I remembered that day, sort of, but what struck me wasn't the fish or the smile. It was the man standing next to me. He had his arm on my shoulder. The caption under it, in my mom's handwriting, said, "Uncle Rob, first catch." I didn't have an Uncle Rob. I never did. I stared at that face, trying to summon some trace of familiarity. But it wasn't there. Not even a flicker. I flipped through more pages. Uncle Rob was in 6 of them. Camping, Christmas, even helping me carve a pumpkin. But I had zero memory of this man. None. He wasn't in any holiday cards, wasn't mentioned in any family stories, wasn't at my wedding. He just existed in the photos. And then vanished. I called my mother. "Hey, Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Quick question. Who was Uncle Rob?" There was a long pause. Too long. "Oh, honey," she said finally. "I haven't heard that name in forever. Where'd you dig him up from?" "Old album," I said. "What happened to him?" "Moved away, I think. After your dad passed. He wasn't blood family anyway. More like a friend of the family." "Why?" I didn't respond. I just watched the photos like they were about to blink. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened every drawer, every digital backup I had, hunting for inconsistencies, holes, cracks in the narrative of my own life. And the more I looked, the more I found them. A class photo from senior year where I remembered sitting on the left, but I was clearly on the right. An old voicemail from my college roommate where he refers to that psych evaluation thing, like it was just a passing detail. I even found an old email to myself, unread, unsent, titled "Remember This," with nothing inside but a list of dates. Random dates. I recognized none of them, but something inside me did. Like pieces of code waking up after years in sleep mode. That's when it hit me. They hadn't just observed me. They hadn't just watched my life. They had edited it. Not physically, maybe. Not time travel or sci-fi nonsense. But memory. Context. Social scaffolding. The people I surrounded myself with, the jobs I took, the things I thought I chose. Maybe none of it was organic. Maybe I'd been positioned every step of the way. Steered. Nudged. A lab rat in a maze I thought I built myself. And Jessa? Maybe she wasn't the first. Maybe she wasn't even the most important. She was just the one I caught. I sat down in the middle of the floor, surrounded by a lifetime of curated debris, and I finally let myself cry. Not because she betrayed me. Not because someone had lied. But because I couldn't tell anymore which parts of my life were real and which were written by someone else's pen. And somewhere, maybe in another black glass building or a cold control room filled with monitors, someone was probably watching, taking notes, and marking the moment I cracked as just another data point. I didn't go to work for 3 days. I called in sick, turned off my phone, and stayed inside with blackout curtains drawn like I was trying to survive a war no one else knew had started. I wasn't hiding from them, not really. I knew if they wanted to get to me, they already had. This was more symbolic. A quiet rebellion. If they were still watching me, I wanted them to know I was done pretending this was normal. I couldn't trust anything anymore. Not my memories, not my relationships, not even my reflection. I started writing everything down in a notebook. Not a digital file, nothing that could be scrubbed or monitored. Just pen and paper. I documented what I remembered and then cross-checked it against photos, messages, files. Whenever I found a contradiction, I circled it in red. The pages started filling fast. Not just with Jessa and the lies, but with older things. My supposed childhood best friend, Gavin, who vanished halfway through junior high with no explanation and no forwarding address. A teacher who'd mentored me, Ms. LeBeau, who'd written my college recommendation letter, except I couldn't find a single trace of her online, and the high school yearbooks listed no such name. I felt like I'd been given a box of puzzle pieces, but half of them belonged to someone else's picture. At some point around 2 a.m., on the fourth night, I had a thought that chilled me to the core. What if I'm not the control anymore? What if I'm the test? That idea burrowed into my head like a splinter. I couldn't shake it. What if all of this, the discovery, the investigation, even the breakdown, was expected? What if I was still playing my part perfectly, right on cue? And just when I was about to spiral again, there was a knock at my door. 3 soft taps. It was 2:11 a.m. No one knocks at that hour unless they mean harm or they're scared. I stayed still for a moment, heart in my throat. Another knock. This time firmer. More urgent. I approached slowly, checked the peephole, and froze. It was Eli, my oldest friend from college. The one person I hadn't reached out to yet, partly because he moved out of state years ago, and partly because I didn't trust my own judgment anymore. He looked off, tired, pale. His hair was longer, clothes unkempt, but his eyes were alert, watching everything. I opened the door halfway. Eli. He stepped inside fast without waiting for an invite. They're watching you, aren't they? I didn't answer, just shut the door behind him. He sat down on the couch, rubbed his hands together like he was trying to get warm. I shouldn't have come, but I had to. I've been off-grid for a while, trying to stay out of their pattern recognition nets. But I saw your name in one of the dormant reports. You're going to need to start making sense fast, I said. He looked up. I was in the program too. My knees nearly buckled. I sat down across from him, trying to process. I didn't make it as long as you, he continued. They pulled me out after phase 2. Said I was too reactive. But I saw the design maps. I recognized the structure when it started happening to you. I thought maybe you'd slip through. But you didn't. You knew? I asked, my voice cracking. You knew and said nothing? I couldn't, Wendell, he said. They monitor active contacts. I'm already flagged. Showing up here was stupid. But I couldn't watch them erase you. Erase. They start small, he said. They test how much of your life they can rewrite before you resist. The girlfriend, the apartment, even parts of your family history, all of it's malleable. You remember what they want you to remember. And when you deviate too far, he didn't finish the sentence. I stood, heart racing. How do I stop it? Eli gave a bitter smile. You don't, but you can document it. You can leave behind something they can't fully erase. And maybe, if enough people start to notice their own cracks. He trailed off again, then pulled a flash drive from his coat pocket. This has my logs, maps, names, but it's risky just holding it. They'll know, so make it count. I stared at the drive. My hand trembled slightly as I took it. And that's when my apartment lights flickered. Just once. Then again. Eli stood immediately. They're here. What? Who? But he didn't answer. He just grabbed my shoulder, looked me dead in the eye, and said, don't trust your next memory. Then he ran. Not walked. Ran, straight down the stairwell, leaving the door open behind him. I didn't follow, because in that exact moment, my phone vibrated. I looked down. A new message. From Jessa. No name. No contact photo. Just one sentence. It's not over yet, Wendell. Meet me where we first broke. And I couldn't tell anymore if I remembered what that meant, or if I'd been programmed to. I didn't respond to the message right away. I stared at it for nearly 20 minutes, reading it over and over like there was a second meaning I was missing. Meet me where we first broke. The phrasing felt deliberate, loaded. Jessa always had a way with words, even when they were meant to wound. But the longer I sat with it, the more I realized I did know what it meant. And not because I was programmed to. Not because someone planted it in my head. I remembered it because it was real. One of the few memories that still felt undisturbed, like a photo nobody bothered to retouch. It was the lake. The same one from the photo. The one where I held the fish beside the man labeled Uncle Rob. That summer, after Jessa and I had our first real blowout, she drove us there. No talking. No arguing. Just silence, wind, and water. We didn't fix anything that day, but something shifted. It was the first time she admitted she was afraid of not knowing who she was becoming. And I'd told her, without fully understanding why, then become something new. It was the last time I saw her cry with honesty. So I went. The lake was smaller than I remembered, less cinematic. The dock looked older, but it was still standing, still there, like it had been waiting, like me. She was already sitting at the edge, back to me, hair pulled up, wearing a black hoodie. No theatrics, no camera crew, just a quiet stillness in the late afternoon light. I walked slowly, keeping my steps soft. She didn't turn around until I was a few feet away. "Wendell," she said. Her voice was softer now. "Human. I got your message." She nodded, then looked out at the lake. "I always liked this place. It's the only thing they didn't script." I stayed quiet. She turned toward me. There were no tears, just a tiredness in her eyes that mirrored my own. "You probably want answers," she said. "I think I already got enough." She smiled faintly. "You were never supposed to wake up. Not fully, but you did. That's rare." "Was it all fake?" I asked, almost afraid of the answer. Her lips parted, but she paused, then shook her head slowly. "No, not all of it. Some things, they happened because they were supposed to. Others happened because I wanted them to." I sat beside her. "Like what?" She looked at me, and for once, I didn't see the performance. I saw her, the person beneath the layers, the one who'd been trapped too. "I stayed longer than I was contracted to," she said. "I broke protocol to leave you that letter. I warned you because I didn't want to be part of breaking you." "You were the first domino," I said quietly. "I know," she replied, "but you're still standing." We sat in silence for a while, the wind rustling through the trees, the lake rippling gently in the breeze. For the first time in weeks, maybe years, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't watching for cameras. I wasn't replaying old conversations. I was here, in this moment, with nothing left to analyze. Just before the sun dipped below the trees, she stood up. "I can't undo what was done," she said, "but I can give you something they don't expect." "What's that?" She reached into her coat pocket and handed me a small flash drive. Different from Eli's. Unmarked. Plain. "This wipes your file. Your pattern. Your profile. It cuts you loose." I took it carefully. "There's a risk," she continued. "You'll lose access to certain systems. Certain protections. It might make things harder." I nodded. "I think I'm okay with hard." She smiled, and this time I believed it. "I'm going dark after this," she said. "You won't hear from me again. But if you ever find another doc like this one, maybe sit for a while. Remember that you made it out." And then she left. Just like that. No tears. No big goodbye. Just a quiet walk down the dirt trail and into the woods. I stayed until the sky turned violet. And when I got home, I didn't look over my shoulder. I didn't check the walls for wires or mirrors for movement. I plugged in the drive and hit run. The screen went black for a moment, then came back on. No fireworks. No alarms. Just my desktop. My real one. No traces. Just me. In the silence, I stood up, opened the window, let the air in. It was cold, crisp, new, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a character. I felt like a person.